So one team who I feel like has gone extremely under the radar in this 2024 NBA free agency has actually happened to be the Golden State Warriors. And I know as a Cleveland Cavaliers fan, I should probably absolutely despise the Golden State Warriors. Like, I should be posting every day about how much Draymond Green looks like fucking Donkey from Shrek. But you know what? I like to be pretty positive and like to, keep a fair and equal thoughts and opinions on, I think, mostly every team in the NBA. Except the Boston Celtics, because I know one guy goes for them who's an absolute tool, and honestly, that guy probably deserves to be or some shit, because he definitely pisses me off. But you know what? Freedom and peace. But obviously, the Golden State Warriors, they're a successful team. They are arguably now the most popular franchise nearly in the NBA. Again, even though the Lakers and the Celtics have always been the two dominant teams in the last 10 years, a couple of the teams you always saw really popular in Australia where I live is the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Chicago Bulls forever, and the Golden State Warriors. But they actually had a really bad start to free agency where it looked like a lot of things were going wrong. They had a trade offer on the table that looked like Andrew Wiggins and Chris Paul for Zach LaVine that they did actually decline. A lot of people were, first of all, starting off by saying that is a terrible trade by the Bulls, that the Warriors actually win that, because if they can get Zach LaVine back to being Zach LaVine, that is a tremendous trade, right? The issue is, in my opinion, is I don't think Zach LaVine, in my eyes, has ever been as good as what people have necessarily said. Not just that, I think if the Warriors are going to use their salary cap, because they are so successful and such a strong franchise, they can use it elsewhere to maybe bring in a much better all-star later on. So what do? They don't do this trade that everyone thinks they should do. They don't get to clear Andrew Wiggins' contract. They waive Chris Paul on a 1-year, $30 million deal. So they legitimately traded Jordan Poole and whatever for nothing. 1 year of Chris Paul. They didn't get to get Zach LaVine. They didn't get to get rid of Andrew Wiggins' $26, $27 million contract where he does basically fuck all. He averaged like 13 points per game this season. Again, I'm a solid Andrew Wiggins fan. I'm praying for my man to bounce back. But then they let Klay Thompson walk. And the diehard Warriors fans were like, shit, we kind of wanted him to retire a Warrior with Steph Curry. And this is just going to feel really weird now, seeing him on another team. Although I agree with that, it's going to be weird. We got to remember this was the best for them to let him leave. The thing is, in clearing Chris Paul's contract, who was a $30 million, 37-year-old player who didn't really fit with the team to start off with, clearing his contract, clearing Klay Thompson, a 34-year-old guy who has a ton of injury issues, and who knows how good he's actually going to be on the Dallas Mavericks, right? Clearing those two players, the Golden State Warriors were actually able to do something that a lot of teams really struggle with this offseason, and that was bring in really solid role players. Now, I'm in love with the three role players that the Golden State Warriors have brought in. First of all, we know the Golden State Warriors did actually bring in Buddy Hield. They acquired Buddy Hield in a sign and trade where the only thing they lost was a 2031 second round pick, which I believe came from Dallas because it ended up being in like this big sign and trade thing for Klay Thompson. The Golden State Warriors were able to get Buddy Hield for pretty much free. Now, I know Buddy Hield struggled a bit in last season finding his role, but I love Buddy Hield as a player. I think his defense is a lot to be desired, but he's a great offensive player who could come into this Warriors team and put in about 15 points per game on 40% from three, which is pretty much the same thing that Klay Thompson was doing. Again, Klay's defense wasn't good. Buddy's will still probably be worse, but I like this move for the Warriors. I think it was pretty good, right? So they go and sign Buddy Hield, who I think will be a pretty solid role player for this team. The report that actually says that he picked the Golden State Warriors over the Los Angeles Lakers because he thought they have a better future really does show that there is faith there. The other player they were able to bring in was they actually signed Kyle Anderson, to a really reasonable deal, I believe worth about 10 million as well, which was reported by Woj. They were able to lure him out of the Minnesota Timberwolves, who are a championship title contender. From what we see, are much better than what the Golden State Warriors are. They were able to lure him to the team, where he is now signed a 3-year deal and is going to be a very valuable role player for them going forward next season. Then obviously the other one they were able to bring in was DeAnthony Melton. I think DeAnthony Melton is a really underrated player. If I remember right, I believe he started a lot of games for Philadelphia this season. He's been a very solid player for Philadelphia for the last couple of years. And he's definitely someone they really wanted to bring back. They just couldn't because of the Paul George signing. But I guarantee they probably tried to do a lot to bring back DeAnthony Melton. And he probably had a ton of teams offering him contracts, being a really good backup guard who probably will start a lot of games for the Golden State Warriors, especially if they have some injuries, which again, touch wood for them, that obviously doesn't happen. Where I'm going with this is the Golden State Warriors managed to clear Klay Thompson's salary, managed to clear Chris Paul's salary, which was like $55 million, I believe, right there, and bring in these 3 solid role players on like $40 million, saving themselves another $15 million while at it. These 3 solid role players, it will be debatable whether or not they are better than Chris Paul and Klay Thompson right now. I don't know. Chris Paul is a better player than DeAnthony Melton. Technically, Klay Thompson's a better player than Buddy Hield, right? But I think these 3 players will be more serviceable for the Golden State Warriors and will be much more beneficial for them down the line as they continue to build this team. Because goddamn did the Warriors struggle for some depth last season. They really needed it, and they bring in 3 solid players. The thing is, I expect the Warriors to continue. I expect them to, hopefully for their sake, continue to sign decent and good players to add to this squad. Again, I think the big one they should go after is Lauri Markkanen. I made a separate video on that, which I highly recommend you guys go and check out. But I definitely think I will play some of the video right now just so you guys know what I am obviously talking about. It says the Warriors have pivoted to trying to acquire Lauri Markkanen, being reported by Woj, ESPN, the GOAT, the best reporter in the game. Now, don't get me wrong. I genuinely believe the Warriors are going to have to probably give up a lot to try and get Markkanen to the team. I don't necessarily think they'll have to give up Kuminga like everyone and their dad is saying that they probably will. I do think, though, the Warriors may prefer to part ways with Kuminga more than giving up 4 to 5 first-round picks by just keeping Kuminga, right? The reason I say this is because if you've got Draymond Green and Markkanen on the same team, then you may not need Kuminga necessarily. But then there's also the other alternative way of looking at it is maybe the Warriors see Draymond as their starting center. The reason there were rumors they were going to waive Kevon Looney, all this type of stuff, right? So if we're looking at that, then yeah, you got to keep Kuminga. So a trade to get Lauri Markkanen from the Jazz is going to be incredibly difficult, but I do think it's something the Warriors should do. Is Markkanen necessarily good enough to be a second option on a championship team? In my opinion, yes, but it is very, very close, right? Like, we got to remember the teams that usually win it, their second option now are like 90 plus overall players on 2K. I know 2K is probably a really bad comparison, but I needed to bring something out of my arsehole really quick, and that's what I've decided to fucking do. You need Markkanen to be that, and he's like an 86, right? He's like an 86, 87. The thing is, though, if they could keep Kuminga, that's where you're saying, well, we think Kuminga can be good enough to a point where he can be a good enough third option that it won't necessarily really matter, right? If you can keep Kuminga, it's probably ideal, especially if you're running Draymond at the center. What would a trade be, though? The lucky thing is for the Warriors is that Andrew Wiggins is on like $22 million because he didn't really get paid that much when he got re-signed from what I believe. I think he's on like 22 to 25. The best thing as well is that Lauri Markkanen's only on $18 million. And I saw a really interesting mock trade because we know the Jazz might be looking to try and move on from a guy like Jordan Clarkson as well. I saw a really interesting mock trade that looked like Jordan Clarkson and Lauri Markkanen to the Warriors, and the Warriors would give up Andrew Wiggins, Moses Moody, 2 unprotected firsts, and 2 pick swaps. I really love that trade for the Warriors. That team really turns from being probably just a playoff team to a contender. Because now you're looking at a starting 5 that looks like Steph at the 1, fucking Brandon Pominski or whatever at the 2, Kuminga at the 3, Markkanen at the 4, Draymond at the 5. With off the bench, you have Jordan Clarkson and actual bench players now, because at the time making this video, they recently just signed Buddy Hield and Slow-Mo Anderson to the team. So not only do you have that really good starting 5, but you have a bench of Slow-Mo Anderson, Buddy Hield, Kevon Looney, who is obviously still there as well. Jordan Clarkson, you now bring into the team. Jackson Trace Davies, I think, is still there. A couple other really interesting players too, right? That is a formidable team. That is a really good team. You probably still need a backup point guard. You got Draymond as your ball handler and Steph as your starting point guard. You might want another guy there, which I guess Clarkson kind of fits that. But again, I would look for another playmaker off that bench. You could probably get one for cheap somewhere along the line there. I'm not exactly too sure. But this is a good trade if the Warriors can do this. And this is a decent trade for the Jazz. So yeah, I think Lauri Markkanen would be a very good fit for this Warriors team. There is a ton that the Golden State Warriors can still do. I think Draymond's a solid player, but as it speaks, you know, they might have a starting 5 of Steph at the 1, Pominski or whatever the fuck you say his name, or Hield at the 2. I think, I would assume Wiggins still at the 3, Kuminga at the 4, and Draymond at the 5, right? It's pretty small, but defensively it should still work. And then if they need to go bigger, you've got Kevon Looney and Jackson Trace Davies all off the bench who should be able to possibly help out, right? There's a ton of things going on right now with the Warriors. They kept their depth. They added a lot more. And I think this is a really good situation. If they can add Markkanen, they should be back into that championship mix, especially if Kuminga were to become the good player we all think he should be able to become. But of course, if you haven't already, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Comment your thoughts and opinions on this all down below. Do you guys think the Golden State Warriors have had a good off-season? Do you think they've won the off-season? Because I definitely think they've been up there. Subscribe to my gaming channel, my IRL/long channels. Links for them will be in the description down below. But as I was saying, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and comment. And I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.